The following episode might contain sensitive content that you might not be comfortable listening to. This will include topics such as self-harm, suicide, alcoholism. If any of these things or anything related might disturb you, please proceed with caution or click off the video now. Preventing something from happening doesn't mean you quit. It just means you know when to stop. Welcome back to another episode of the Only Rainy Days podcast. My name is Hazy, and today, as you can tell from the title, if I don't forget, the title of the episode is Overload, or Overloaded. I haven't decided yet at the time of recording, but I want to talk about in this episode necessarily the idea of knowing when to stop doing something or to prevent something from happening anymore. Just because it is doesn't mean it should, and just because it's happening doesn't mean it should happen anymore. Today doesn't dictate tomorrow, just like yesterday didn't dictate today. And that's a principle that I hold very core to myself, to be honest. It's something that helps me realize that any mistakes that I made yesterday, any mistakes someone made yesterday, or even today, doesn't necessarily dictate them in the future. I shouldn't hold either myself or anyone else accountable for what happened in one 24-hour span. What matters most is the actions that I and other people take over an extended period of time, because only over an extended period of time can you figure out exactly where their thoughts lie, where their morals lie. You can get a better sense of who they are as a person. And I think this is a perfect topic because as of, it's November 19th at the time of recording. I made the decision yesterday. So on the 18th of November, I decided that I'm either going to resign or take a leave of absence at my full-time job that I'm holding at the moment. And the decision it came from a variety of thoughts and problems, things that have started to manifest itself into other fields of my life. But I hit a point where I realized that I started to hit what I would call my breaking point, things that people would call critical mass, something where I realized that the problems that were starting to arise was going to start really harming what was going on in other aspects of my life. It's already been harming parts of my life. The way I see it, there's about 4 to 5 different zones of my life that I tried to find a balance to with all the work that I was taking in. And as life is a balancing act, I started to realize that, one, certain aspects started to hold different weights, and two, it was getting increasingly harder to balance it appropriately. It was becoming too much to bear, and in a desperate act, I threw one of them away, and eventually, now I figured out that I also need to, at the very least, put this one on the sideline, saying that I have the time and the financial savings and the backings to do so. So when I think about my life, there's a couple factors, a couple zones that I really need to worry about. There's my friends, there's my family, and then there's my work. And then there's also personal goals. And then it ended, unfortunately, due to things that I was dealing with and some of the feelings that I was having towards it. But the fifth zone was also my relationship. I was in a dedicated relationship with someone that I still hold dearly to my heart, and I hope it stays that way. But those were the 5 zones that I had going into another job, because I also work part-time. So for the last 3 months, I was working 55-hour weeks divided into 2 jobs. I had a full-time job for 40 hours a week, and I had a part-time job that was split for 15 hours a week. And I could choose the days and times, but There wasn't, considering that I still worked 4 days a week, 10 hours a day. Thought about it and I scheduled it. There was still guaranteed to be about 3 days. But then it could have been better, but I set it up where there were 3 days within the week that I was working 13-hour days. And it became very taxing towards my life. I spent a lot of days waking up, getting ready for work, going to work, doing my 10 hours, coming home. If I had to, I would do the dishes. And then I'd take a shower, do my second job, and then go to sleep. And those would be my 13-hour days. My 13-hour days would encompass 16 to 17 hours of my life, given the time I would take to get ready, shower again, because I would shower when I get home. If I do dishes, that
the following episode,
so 16, 17 hours on days I didn't have to do 2 jobs, and it was just my 10-hour position. It would just be the same, but instead of working when I get out the shower, I just have that time to breathe. But when I had that time to breathe, it would get questionable, because it's either I devote my time to personal passions, such as this podcast or other things that I wanted to work on, or I give my time to the person I was in a relationship to. And I think it was personally a problem of how I decided to work, but I was unable to find a balance between personal projects and my relationship. Some things that I wanted to do, it felt like it was not comfortable, if possible at all, really, to do it, to work and be available to this person I was in a relationship with at all. A lot of things that I did required my ears to be focused, because there was a lot of either siphoning through audio or editing audio. So it just made it very hard to try to just spend this free time I had listening and also talking, communicating with this person, because it's just like I'm trying to listen to something, but it's exceptionally hard to both listen to something and listen to this person talk and try to give responses that doesn't sound like I'm just blowing them off. It was not an easy task to me. And even if I finished the audio work, I'm still doing other things. So sometimes they would text me like, hey, what are you doing today? What are you doing this morning, this night? If I was off, like, oh, what's your plans for today? And I tell them like, oh, I just need to do X and Y. I don't have to focus on Z, which is audio work. I did it earlier. So just like, oh, wonderful. Can we spend time today? Can we spend time on FaceTime and just, be together for some time? And I agreed, because I didn't want to lose the person. I still don't feel well about the fact that I had to break it off, or I felt like I had to. So I would agree, and I would spend my time with them and try to work at the same time. But it just, even with the reassurance and everything, I either felt or falsely felt that they weren't necessarily comfortable with how the time was being spent. We could spend 2-3 hours, even though sometimes it was way shorter than that, just on FaceTime, looking at each other and talking to each other while I'm trying to work. But it would just get to a point where I'm working, basically drooling on myself. Yeah, this person's talking in an effort to like try to get my attention or just tell me about something that's going on in their life, and I couldn't deal with it. And even times when I didn't have work and we were just talking, the only thing I wanted to do when I didn't have to work, or didn't feel like I didn't have to work, or I simply chose not to work and I had some free time, all I wanted to do was just spend that time alone, because I felt drained. There was a lot of things that I felt like I was trying to work on. Rather, it feels insignificant now, maybe if it feels insignificant later, it is things that I still want to try to progress now and in the future. So I would spend my time appropriately with it. And a lot of that time meant that in the few moments that I had before work, maybe on break between work, maybe after work, I spent a lot of time still with friends or my family. I worked night shift. When it came to those 10 hours a day, I worked from 6:30 p.m. to 5 a.m. And that time frame really meant that it was either, if I didn't get the time to appropriately talk to my family or my friends before I got to work, they would try or want my time when I got off of work. And both of those segments were both trying to be, I don't want to say taken because that doesn't feel right, but the person I was in a relationship with wanted that time as well. And I didn't know what to do, and it felt bad. If I get off work and I have an hour and a half, 2 hours where I think I want to sleep, or I feel like I want to sleep because I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I'm physically and emotionally drained from my job, sometimes 30 minutes of an hour of it would be just taken up by my family, the people who live in the house with me, because they haven't seen me all day. I slept the last morning, woke up, got ready, talked to them just to say goodbye. I'm leaving. I need to go to work. I love you. And I go. So the morning was like their only time to talk to me too. So it just made it hard. And with the increasing pressure to try to figure out how to spend appropriate time, at least in my eyes, because they did their absolute best to try to assure me that what I was doing both wasn't wrong and that they accepted it and just wanted to be there for me and work with me through it. All the stress built up on me to the point where I realized that I started to value the time I spent alone more than I valued time that I spent with them. And that realization, it really hurt. It hurt me, and it hurt the person I was in a relationship with. I love them. Simply put, I love them, and they love me too. So hurting them was a special type of pain to me, but also just not having them there, even despite everything I did consciously or subconsciously to basically push them away, it all stung. I feel like a hypocrite for saying it and admitting it, but it is what it is. There's a void that hasn't been filled yet because of their absence. And their absence is simply my fault and my issue. And I just have to deal with it, but it still hurts nonetheless. But regardless, I did what I had to do because it felt like outside of doing the monotonous work of my job, I didn't have a moment to breathe with myself. It would be wake up, get ready, drive to work. There was no mental peace there. I go to work, and while I'm working, I have that time to just think while I'm doing it because it's monotonous. It's the same thing over and over and over again. That wasn't mental peace. I'd have 2 30-minute breaks throughout the 10-hour day. It would bring me peace, but because those were some of the only times that I was able to just speak, the person I was in a relationship with would say, "Oh, you're on break," because I gave them my schedule, and they would call me. So I'd spend my breaks talking to them instead of just trying to sit there and just be like, okay, well, I just spent the last 3.5 hours destroying my brain in this job because I'm all over the place trying to figure out how can I cope with this job? How can I cope with both jobs overlapping each other? How can I deal with what's happening in my family life? How can I deal with what's happening between me and my friends in their lives? How can I deal with just how I feel about everything? I had an incessant amount of fear about my relationship. How can I deal with that? I'm destroying my brain inside this job. And the 30 minutes I would have to just sit there and not have to move and actually process or just let it all go, I would spend with someone else. And I did that for both of my breaks. And then I drive home stressed, tired. By the time I get home, I've been up for 13 hours or so. And I take a shower. And when I get out of the shower, it's either I'm working or I'm not working, or I'm not doing my part-time job. Regardless of if it was my part-time job or not, I'm usually either texting or on FaceTime with the person I was in a relationship with. And when I'm done and I realize I need to go to sleep, I go to bed. The entire day was spent racking my brain or being with someone to the point where I couldn't process what was going on. And it went like that for about 2.5 months until I had enough. So I remember by like a month and a half, 2 months into my full-time job, I hit there was a point where my relationship kind of went downhill because all we did was talk about what was going wrong and how can we fix it as opposed to actually implementing it, I guess. There's a lot of stress going on. And one day I was just sitting there on break, having a break to myself. I would just be alone, and I saw some of my friends in call. So I remember just joining them in the Discord call, just in my car in my 30-minute break, just trying to figure out just trying to listen to them, just be like, I just want to de-stress. I just need a moment to breathe, and maybe laughter is the best medicine. Let me see if they can help me just relax. And I remember they were talking, and it was clear that a lot of them just had plans to just have a lot of fun. There was more people than I usually see on Friday nights, and they were all planning to just be up and just do a lot. And it sounded enticing. So the enticement, the stress, and the fact that I never took a break. I never took time off in those 2.5 months I was at my job. I decided for the first time, okay, I'm going to call off and I'm just going to go home early. 3.5 hours into my shift, I'm just going to go home, take a shower, and I'm going to relax with my friends. This should be something that could help me just learn how to breathe. Maybe I'd find my balance. Unknown to me, or I guess not unknown, but something I guess I didn't account for was the person I was in a relationship with told me that whenever I had time, they wanted to talk about something. So I get home, I take my shower, and everything's cool. I'm with my friends, I'm laughing, and I just remember telling them oh yeah, I'm home. I took a break off work. This thing that you wanted to talk about, if you want to talk about it, we can talk about it now. If you want to call me and talk about it, I can jump away from my friends real fast. You can call me and we can just discuss it. But otherwise, if it's something you don't want to basically look me in my eyes and say, then you can just text me. That works too. And they address my concerns and my fears about the relationship. And they just asked me straightforward, which was something I didn't expect that day or ever, but I have an unnatural amount of respect for them because I was struggling on how to bring it up because it was on my mind. They asked me, if you want to do this, then I support it. I hope you don't, but if this is better for you, then I just want what's best for you. Do you think it'd be better if we broke up? And I had to tell them, I think so. I think it'd be better if we did. Because right now, it's getting to the point where I'm not finding comfort in a lot of things. My friends bring me comfort, but my friends bring me comfort being on call with the person I was in a relationship with and brought me comfort, but it was a double-edged dagger. It felt like comfort, but it was still bothering me, whether it be I'm trying to spend this time to de-stress privately and try to deal with what's going on in my head, or I feel like I'm dodging my work and my responsibilities by being with you. If all this time I spent just with other people just felt terrible, and it still does to an extent. But I told them, you've heard the things I've been saying to you. you know where my headspace is. I'm not letting you help me really with how I feel, but you're aware at the very least that I haven't been doing well for a good moment now. And yeah, I think it's best if we just backed off, and I hope that we can stay friends. If you choose that we shouldn't be friends, I understand 100%, but I think that would be better for me because I'm losing my mind, quite honestly. So we broke up. Unfortunately, based on the time zone and everything, I broke up on our 8th month anniversary on the day, November 5th, because we got together on March 5th. And part of me, with saying all that and letting my mind go, and then even spending about a week or so, just we both kept our distance for a little bit. I thought that would be like what I needed to just figure out how to get through what I was doing and dealing with on a daily basis, because I finally had time to myself. I could spend my 30-minute breaks just sitting there in my car, just staring through the windshield, just trying my absolute best to just either deal with what's going on in my mind or just forget it so I can breathe, because there's been a lot of moments where I almost broke down into tears just working, and it wasn't because the work was stressful, but my mind was just not in a great place. But that free time was something that I hoped could be like, okay, Hazy can find his mental peace, his little footing, and we can at least get through this day. Unfortunately, it didn't work that way, because here I am 2 weeks on the day from when we broke up, and I decided that I need to take a full break from my job in general. So I'm chopping down again from 55 hours back to just 15, because the last week or two, whether it be from the stress of breaking up and everything that comes with it or not, I don't know. I'm not feeling well. I'm feeling overloaded, to be honest. I don't really know how to put it into proper words, into context, into scale. The best I can say it is I spent a unnatural amount of my time growing up mentally, but in different aspects. I spent so much time trying to get myself proper mentally that I never learned what it looked like to get myself correct for the future. So I spent the last 3-4 years trying to figure out how can I mold myself mentally to get through hardships and all this weird mental baggage that I've been holding. But I never learned, or I never been able to fully process, like, what does it look like to actually start marching through the darkness that I'm also so afraid of. I never learned. I just never did anything with that. And maybe that's it. I don't know what it is, but I've been having not nightmares, because I haven't been dreaming a lot, but quite honestly, there's been a lot of nights lately where before I go to sleep, or hours when I first wake up before I go to sleep while I was working, I would just have these vivid thoughts of just like very terrible scenarios involving my death, basically. And I would make jokes about it. I try to forget about it. I did everything in my power to just try to cope with it, but it just didn't work. The jokes weren't just jokes, but no one caught on to it, and I just didn't know. I don't know what to do, because it's scary to just. It's pretty scary to wake up an hour before you have to go to work, and that entire hour is just filled with vivid thoughts of just like you could just die at any moment on your way to work. It made it scary to drive to work. I'd go to work and I would just think of these absurd, basically, scenarios where I die or someone in front of me would just die. And it was just like, my thoughts are just filled with death. But the part that really sent me over was, usually it was just thoughts of just driving and dying, drunk driving jokes and dying, whatever it might be. But the part that sent me over was, last night, I got home from work, did my second job, 13-hour day. And I remember just sending my friend a message because they were trying to talk about something and we were just catching up a little bit. I told him, like, this 55-hour shit is draining my soul. And I said it because it was a true statement, but just kind of reading the text on the screen kind of just really resonated with me. It's just like, this really is just taking a toll on me. Or at the very least, I'd be willing to do this amount of work for more compensation. The amount I'm stressing myself out, the amount I'm working, doesn't feel like it's proportional to what I'm gaining out of it or what I might gain out of it. So it felt bad. I just remember basically just sitting there for the next hour before I went to bed. I spent 20 minutes in bed trying to fall asleep, just basically daydreaming, just thinking, sitting there stuck in my own thoughts and emotions. But all I could think about was just dying. It is some of the worst suicidal thoughts I've had in the last year or two or so. Because even confronted with the worst situations, it would just be, at the very least, I'd run and I tried to do my damnedest to just figure out how can I get through this. But in my mind yesterday and last night, all I felt was giving up. It would just be some terrible sequence that just went like this. It would just be like one day I would just have enough, and on one of my off days or whatever, I just grab this like drawstring bag that I would have. It's not clear through anything. I fill up a water bottle with some alcohol, and I would have a pocket knife in my backpack, and I would just take an Uber to the train station, take the train downtown, walk towards the edge of what I would call pedestrian city, but it's basically just, you'll stop seeing so many people downtown Chicago. And I would just, as I would walk, I would just drink and just take deeper and deeper cuts until it just ended. And that's all I could think about for practically 2 hours. I couldn't really move or think. I felt like more of a shell of myself than I have in quite a while. It's all I could think about. It was terrible. And that moment really made me realize that something needs to change. So when I woke up today and I was taking my shower, getting ready to go to work, I was just like, I could finish this week out strong. But I think what's smart is to just call out anyway, because it doesn't matter. Like, I'm going to get, it's paid time off. We can just figure something out, and I just need a break because I need to address what's going on in my mind, because I'm starting to move back towards this idea of a mental rock bottom, basically. It's just like, this is too much. I'm overloaded, and I need to not act like I'm not overloaded, because trying to force my way through this door is actually going to get me killed. It's not the same as just feeling stressed to the point where you might fail an assignment or something, or you decide to choose your priorities where I will let this one slide just to make this one work. It was just like, if I keep forcing my way through this, I'm just going to break at some point. And it was possible to say that. It's probable, I don't know, to say that I was going to do it or not. I can't tell you, but it started to feel like more of a possibility than what I was willing to take a shot with. So I threw in the towel. I'm going to use all my paid time, all my time off. I'm going to try to see if I can use any of my vacation hours. And then I'm just going to quit. I'm just going to file resignation. And that's it. And I won't accept any answers from any other person. Their opinion doesn't matter. It's not them that has to deal with what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking. And I think that's the important thing, because this is technically the second time in my life that I've finally decided that enough is enough. Because usually I try to truck through it through any means necessary. And I really mean any means necessary. And I come out with what I wanted most of the time. But there would be side effects and repercussions to my actions that I wasn't prepared for, or I never wanted, or anything of the sort. It never just happened as originally planned. So, in a sense, despite it feeling kind of bad because I want the money, I need the money, and I feel like I'm giving up in a sense, I have to keep reminding myself, no, it's not giving up. I have to just keep telling myself, because I know it's true. It's not giving up. It's just knowing when to stop something from happening for far too long. Because I know what it could have done. You know, just because I went to work yesterday doesn't mean that I have to go to work today, or any other comparison that you can try to make. I was talking to a new friend that I made a week ago. They were telling me about how they were on break from college, from school, because they realized that they were hitting this point where they felt overloaded, and it was just not for them, because they feared that the worst might come to them because they were trying their hardest to just go through it by any means. No, if you have the option to slow down, I urge you to take the option to slow down, because options to slow down might not show up all the time. You have to judge each situation very carefully, because there might be some times in your life where it's not an option, because to slow down means to lose everything. But if slowing down just means moving at a slower pace, or letting go of something that isn't necessarily essential to your life, then it's time to slow down. There's a difference between slowing down on work and realizing that you can't pay rent versus slowing down and just having to take that semester of school at a different time in life. There's a very big difference when it comes to these type of things. It's not the same. It's not the same remotely close. So it's just very important to just know, like, is this really for me? And is this really something that I need to do right now? Is something that I even want to do? My job wasn't something I wanted to do at all. I was just doing it for the money, in a scenario where the money would be nice to have for the future, but I'm not in a situation where not having the money would be detrimental to the way that I live life right now. It was just a future fund. And because I knew that if I was to stop working for a period of time, I would lose out on potential, but I wouldn't lose out on necessities and things I need at this current moment. So I'm going to use my position to my advantage and take a break from what I'm doing right now, because it is not doing my mental state any justice. It's draining me to an extent that I'm quite scared of, to be honest. But that's a very important part in life that I didn't learn until I got way too scared. Because the first time that I figured out that I was overloaded, first time I really felt overloaded, to be honest, I delayed the inevitable to the absolute longest. I believe I talked about this in the pilot episode. But when I was a sophomore in high school and I felt overloaded, I tried my absolute hardest to avoid slowing down, because I just felt like it was a terrible thing to do. People told me that it didn't feel right, so it never felt right to me. It feels right now, but it feels correct now, but it didn't back then. So I still have the scars on both of my arms. I did everything I could. I was drinking and I was self-harming a lot. Every single day, every morning, I recall coming back to my room for lunch break and self-harming again, just to try to get the chemicals in my brain to try to get through that day, because it was tearing me apart. And the only reason why I'm still here today, because I finally I had a counselor, and I met with my counselor before my last class of the day. And before I left, I got through the entire hour with my counselor without saying anything. And she asked me before I left, is there anything you want to bring up? And I looked her in the eyes and I had to tell her, I need you to get me some help, because I think I'm going to kill myself tonight if nothing changes. I was at my wit's end, my rock bottom. I couldn't do anything. I didn't feel like doing anything. I was completely ready to give up. And that's what I mean by emergency brake, because that situation could have been prevented if I just confided in my counselor for the 1 month that I was seeing her way earlier, that I felt like I should just back down and go see a counselor or a therapist now. Or see a therapist. She's my counselor. I should go see a therapist now. And I could have saved myself this permanent scars I have in my arms and the mental stress and trauma from the situation. A lot of it could have been avoided, but I didn't want to slow down. But regardless, I feel blessed and I feel happy, because a lot of people don't even hit that emergency brake. They just crash and burn out without warning, really, to a lot of people, to anyone sometimes. And it's a sad sight to see. It's a sad sight to see people go, especially when sometimes you feel like you never saw it coming. There's definitely signs in people, but some people don't leave signs. Some people just go without giving any signs, any feelings that, like, maybe this person needs some help deep down. So every day is kind of a blessing, because I learned through hitting the hardest break I could that it's okay to just step back and take your time and learn how to regain your footing. Because when I got back a month later from my mental health break, my sophomore year, I started to do better in school. But most importantly, to me at least, I learned how to make friends. I was a very socially anxious kid. When I got back to school, I was actually ecstatic to be there and just being happy for once at school. Being happy for once to be at school helped me start making friends way easier, and I started to break out of my social shell. I learned so much despite feeling initially like I got nothing from stopping. I'm a way different person now than who I was 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, because I learned how to slow down and take time to assess what was going wrong and what I just wanted to change about myself. It was important to learn what it feels like to be overloaded. And it was important to learn it was important to learn how to overcome it as well. What it is today doesn't dictate what it is tomorrow. And what it was doesn't mean it is.